the Healing Through Love podcast with Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. In episode 137, learn how to turn your mess into success with Wendy Alexander's actionable steps to transform your life.
What I did was make some sacrifices. There were no more dinners out anymore. There were no more movies, and all these were all things I love, right? But I had to sacrifice that because it's like, I need to create my future. So I stopped, I sacrificed, and it was probably the loneliest time of my life because I'm a new mother. I'm not going out anywhere. I'm at home with a baby and I'm trying to recreate my career. But there was a sacrifice required, and I suppose I was willing to make that sacrifice. So you do have to be willing to make some sacrifice. For some people, it's not a huge one. For me, it was a huge sacrifice. And then eventually things started to slowly turn around. Because it's very easy when you're in pain and when you've come out of, especially domestic violence, and you're feeling battered and shattered in every way, shape, or form. It's very easy to sink and to kind of stay there and to cry nonstop and to be paralyzed with inaction, all of those things.
Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast, a space where stories of strength and resilience and transformation unfold. I'm your host, Charlene Lynch, and I'm honoured to be your guide on this journey of empowerment and healing. Today, we have a very special episode tailored just for you, whether you're driving the car, sipping a cup of tea, or simply taking a moment to yourself. I want you to know that you're in a safe place. Healing Through Love is more than a podcast. It's a community, a beacon of hope, and a reminder that you are not alone. In this episode, we have a guest who's going to share a story that resonates at the core of our mission, a story that illuminates the power of love, resilience, and unwavering strength that lies within each and every one of us. So settle back, take a deep breath, and let the healing journey begin. But before we dive into today's inspiring narrative, a quick reminder that if you find value in our episode, please consider supporting us by subscribing and sharing and leaving a review. Your engagement helps us reach the hearts and spread the message of healing at the speed of love. Today, we've got a very special guest with us, and her name is Wendy. She is an interview and career coach, which is absolutely fascinating. We're going to ask her lots of questions, who helps people look at hiring managers and that can't be ignored. You know what, Wendy? I'm just going to jump in and say hello and tell us a little bit about you. Why are you a career coach?
So the career coaching started over 27 years ago when I had to elevate myself out of a very difficult situation. So I was in a relationship for almost 10 years. The relationship came to a violent end. There was domestic violence in that relationship. And then I fell pregnant. And I suppose the last occurrence of the domestic violence occurred when I found out my partner was having an affair and ended the relationship, but he didn't quite accept that. And so came after me, both physically, financially, etc. And I almost lost the baby. I was 4 months pregnant when that relationship ended so violently. And I was in a mess. Honestly, the truth was that I'd lost everything, including my home that I'd worked 3 jobs to attain. And when I came out of that relationship, the only thing I could think of was I have to find a way to support this child. I was going on maternity leave, so I was terrified because I was like, the income is going to stop. The house sold at a loss. There was a $50,000 debt that I was carrying at the time, and I had a baby in the belly. And so it was like, okay, where do I start? And in my mind, it was, I need to in order to pay this debt down, in order to support my daughter and start all over again, I have to get a job that's going to pay me at least $20,000 more than I'm currently earning. And so a couple of things. I had my parents in my life supporting me. I actually moved in with my parents prior to delivering my daughter. So that was the first dose of love, getting me through that very difficult time. I also had a love of words. I'd written stories and poetry and all these things all my life. And I was journaling, and I had this ability with words. And so I started playing around with my resume, because I was thinking, like, how do I write a resume that's going to get someone to pay attention to me, give me an opportunity, and let me jump this income that I needed to do? And so I started playing around with the words, with the resume, but then I also started to reach out to recruiters and hiring people and started picking their brains. And that's, I suppose, where I encountered another dose of love, because those people helped me. Now, I wasn't expecting people, and one or two people were coaches, and they said to me, look, this is what I charge. At the time, I couldn't afford it because I had so much debt hanging over my head. So what I did was, I was like, okay, I'm going to save until I can pay this person to coach me through this process. But there were many people who simply gave me the advice. They met me for lunch, or they met me for coffee, and they told me different strategies that I could apply. So between the support and love of my parents helping me out with my daughter, me writing my resume a gazillion times over, these recruiters and hiring people giving me knowledge and strategies, I ended up just testing my resume and my LinkedIn and things in the market, and eventually landed an interview, which I didn't get that job, but landed very soon after that, landed another interview. And what I had done was, I went back to that first interview and said, can you give me feedback on where I went wrong? So, and they did. They actually did give me feedback and said, this is where you could improve, and so on and so on. So when I went up for the next interview, I ended up landing that job. That job jumped my income by 50,000, which shocked me. And that was really where it started for me, because I gained the success that I had been striving for with all these strategies. The people around me, friends, colleagues, family members, saw that I jumped very quickly from rock bottom, catapulting my career myself. And so they came for help. And I started to just help people. And at first, it wasn't a business. I was just helping people, teaching them what I had done. They started getting success. And then I was like, oh, there's something here. There's a business here. But I was also launched into corporate. And so the business was very much a part-time business for about 20 years. And then in the last 4 years, 5 years, I've gone full-time in my business. As I reached midlife and menopause and that challenge, I made the shift and decided I wanted to be a full-time career coach. So that's what I do now.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Now, what part of the world are you in, Wendy?
I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, so we're sort of neighbours.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it. So what would be your key pieces of information or your key guidance? What's your 3 most important things that someone who's coming out of a situation and needs to start afresh with a career, what would be your 3 most important pieces of information to share with them?
Well, look, I think often when you're coming out of a difficult situation, one of the first things that I did, aside from those strategies that I did, was, identifying I needed more money, was I went and got counseling. That was the first thing I did, because I was battered physically, emotionally, financially. And I do call that time of my life the mess, the rock bottom mess. And what I knew was that I didn't want to be defined by that. I didn't want to be a victim of that. And also I learned very early in the pregnancy, or sort of at the 4.5 month mark, because I almost lost the baby. They did the ultrasound, whatever. And intuitively, I had this feeling it was going to be a girl. And then when I went for the ultrasound, the lady said to me, "Oh, I can see the sex. Do you want to know?" And I said, "It's a girl, isn't it?" And she said, "Yes." And so once I had that confirmed, I knew without even knowing why I knew that I needed to be a good example for this daughter. I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to raise my daughter as a victim. And so I went for counseling. I knew that without being able to properly define it, I knew that somehow I had played a part in attracting that in my life, right? It's easy to blame, and I was at the time putting a lot of blame on him, but there was a part of me that it attracted. And there was also that part of me that had not set that boundary. I put up with it for all those years. We were together for almost 10 years, and there was probably 5 great years, and then the last 5 years were difficult. And it was on and off for that kind of relationship. And so in the end, I was like, I can't keep blaming him. I have to heal. How am I going to heal? So counseling, that was the first thing. Go and seek the emotional, spiritual help that you think you need to get through a difficult time. The other thing I would say to people is you need to figure out finances, because it's very difficult to make any significant moves if you're drowning in financial problems. So somehow you've got to find a way to figure that out. I went and got help from my parents. I asked them for support. I said, I need help with the babysitting. I need to go and recreate my career. I have to start all over. I've got this debt that I've got to pay off. So be willing to ask for help where you can. And you'll be surprised at how many people, when you ask for help with authenticity and vulnerability, people step up. People stepped up for me. There's a lot of stuff in the world, and they go, people will never help you. People help me. Even those recruiters and those hiring people, they didn't know me, but they had the coffee with me. They had the lunch with me because I asked. So I suppose be willing to ask. And then the third step is to go and find someone who's potentially already succeeded where you need to go, and go get help from that person. And if you can't afford the person immediately, like I couldn't, what I did was make some sacrifices. There were no more dinners out anymore. There were no more movies, and these were all things I love, right? But I had to sacrifice that because it's like, I need to create my future. So I stopped, I sacrificed, and it was probably the loneliest time of my life because I'm a new mother. I'm not going out anywhere. I'm at home with a baby, and I'm trying to recreate my career. But there was a sacrifice required, and I suppose I was willing to make that sacrifice. So you do have to be willing to make some sacrifice. For some people, it's not a huge one. For me, it was a huge sacrifice. And then eventually things started to slowly turn around. Because it's very easy when you're in pain and when you've come out of, especially domestic violence, and you're feeling battered and shattered in every way, shape, or form. It's very easy to sink and to kind of stay there and to cry nonstop and to be paralyzed with inaction, all of those things, but they don't actually help elevate or lift you out of it. And so eventually you have to take an action. And what I realized was it didn't matter what action I took as long as I took one small action forward. And once I started to do the one action, then I was able to do the next one and the next one, and then slowly build the momentum. But I always say I didn't create my success out of my mess without the help of others. You have to ask for help.
I love it. I love it. So what do you think is the number one thing people can do to stop being ghosted by recruiters?
So recruiters today, look, I think the whole job hunting situation has changed. Back in my day when I was, and this is, 28, 30 years ago, the recruiters were very much about forming relationships with their candidates. So all the people I worked with would put us forward for roles, but then they'd also build us. They'd give us education programs so we could build our skills. Now, the game has changed, and recruiters a lot of them are younger people. So they're all about social media. So that relationship building piece, that person-to-person relationship building piece is missing in today's recruitment market, or certainly that's what I see. So I think then candidates have to pivot. So you've got to meet people where they are working from. And so one of the things that's to our advantage as candidates in this current world is LinkedIn. It's the professional networking platform. So if you want to stand out, you need to build a really great LinkedIn profile. That's one of the strategies I teach most of the people I work with. It's like, don't underestimate the power of LinkedIn. I know you hate it. I know you think it's not Facebook and Instagram and all of these, and it isn't, because it is a professional networking platform. But what I've seen is the best roles, what I call the prime juicy roles, happen in the networks. They're not even advertised. So 80% of the prime roles happen through networking. And it's a lot easier for people to build networking and connections now because we have LinkedIn. In my day, I had to go to these meetups. I had to travel into the city, go to the meetups, talk to people, almost like speed dating in corporate to try and get opportunities. But now you can build connections and networks with anybody across the world if you just go to LinkedIn and start making it happen. But number one, you need a great profile, because nobody's going to take you seriously if you don't have a great LinkedIn profile. People view it. They go and look at your headline. They go and look at how you present yourself in your banner picture. They go and look at what does your profile picture look like? They go and look at your about section. How do you actually sell yourself? So all of these things matter, but so many people underestimate the power of that. And I would say that's one of the key things you can do. One of the key ways you can get people to pay attention to you, and that's not just recruiters. That's hiring people, because there are many hiring managers who cut out the recruiter because they don't want to pay them the commission, and they go directly to LinkedIn. And they're looking for people like you with the talent, who's taking their career seriously, who's presenting themselves in a professional manner. So all of these things count, but LinkedIn is very underestimated. Very underestimated. But when I work with people, I have a very heavy focus on that. I teach them to network.
Excellent. I love it. I love it. Okay. So what do you think is, so once they've got the job interview, then they've obviously got the interview, like, what do you think is the main thing that people can bring to the table to help them with that anxiety in and around the job interview itself?
So look, that's where a lot of people fall down. So sometimes people are wise enough to go and get a writer to help them write their resume and their LinkedIn and their cover letters. They end up landing interview after interview. And this is where I see people fall down. They tank in the interview. And a lot of it is due to lack of preparation, because we're all going to get nervous when we're going up for something that could potentially affect our way going forward and our finances, which our jobs do. There's nerves. And a lot of interviewers, hiring people, expect you to be nervous. And they're not the monsters that people think they are, right? They know that there's a level of nerves. So often when an interview starts out, you have someone stumbling and fumbling a little bit. But what they do expect is for you to gain momentum as the interview goes on. They do expect to see you start to get your stride and get your confidence. If that doesn't happen, and I've seen that, not because I used to hire in corporate as well, so I've hired hundreds of people for major projects. And one of the things I see them fall down is that they don't know their own professional story very well. They may have put a resume together, or they may have worked with a coach or a writer to put their resume and their LinkedIn together, but they don't actually know the contributions they've made, or they undervalue the contributions they've made in the various jobs that they've worked. And so when someone asks them a question, they don't know how to go to their professional story and actually demonstrate how they've contributed. And of course, that's where people fall down, because if you don't sell yourself in a sharp and succinct way to someone who's listening to your story, you're not going to leave them with a level of confidence that you can actually deliver for their company or for their program or projects, right? So you have to be able, and I've seen that only occur where people really know their resume. So I always tell people, know your resume inside and out, have your examples of what you're going to use for various questions. And sometimes you can maybe have 6 to 8 very strong examples and reuse them over and over in different ways in the different questions. You don't need to have a long list of examples of your great achievements or your great wins. Have the ones that are strongest and use them in the context of the question. The other thing I've seen when people get very nervous in an interview is they don't listen. So they often don't wait until the interviewer has completed the entire question. They listen and they hear the first part of the question, they start answering, and the second part of the question is not finished. And then they rabbit on and they've answered this first section, but the second section is missed. So now you haven't actually given the interviewer what they're looking for.
No.
That's not going to help, right? But the biggest thing is practice. It is like any other skill. Practice, practice, practice. And if you're going to invest any money, because people can go and do their resumes themselves, if you can write half decently and you look at a few templates and you study a few tips, and I have many tips and tricks on my LinkedIn, you can go and look at the free videos that I do there. If you know how to write your resume on LinkedIn, fine. But if you don't know how to interview confidently, that's where you want to invest your money, with a coach, and go and practice with a coach, not with a friend, not with mom and dad, because they're not going to give you the feedback that you need.
I love it.
Right? You need good feedback so that you get better and better.
Okay, 2 more questions. Number 1, how do you help someone stand out in a crowd? This is a very noisy marketplace. There's lots of people standing in lines. What's the number 1 piece of advice you can give our listeners today of how they can stand out in the crowd?
So obviously, jobs at the moment, we have got tight job markets. So sometimes recruiters and hiring people are seeing 100 applicants for one job. So clearly that is a crowd, right? But what I've seen is people have very run-of-the-mill standard resumes, and most people's resumes, and I would say 90% of resumes, are very responsibilities and task focused. That does not make you stand out. Where you stand out is if you pivot and you become achievements focused, because this is what an interviewer or a company is looking for. Tell me what you've achieved in other roles so I can clearly see how you can do that for my company. But so many people write their resumes and it's all about, I did this, I did that, my responsibilities were this, my tasks were that, no achievements, right? And so if you want to stand out, you need to pivot the resume, and it needs to become very achievements focused, because it is through your achievements that you demonstrate the value you can bring, right? You've already done this in this company, or 2 companies ago, or 3 companies ago. You've got these clear, and if you can add some metrics to it, like if you can quantify the achievement with some numbers, it makes it even stronger.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. And then the next question is about ChatGPT. So with ChatGPT being everything that it is, if you ask the right questions and give it the right information, it can come up with, pretty good CV and a pretty good covering letter as well. Where do you think ChatGPT sits in all of this, applying for jobs?
Look, I think it's a great tool. I use ChatGPT myself for writing things, because I do copywriting as well. So it generates great ideas. However, you need to communicate in your tone. And so don't just take a ChatGPT resume or cover letter and send it off to someone. Because the moment you turn up for the interview, they're going to see the difference in the tone and in the way you communicate. So you always need to adapt it to how you communicate. Always be authentic. So if you get great ideas from ChatGPT, I'm all for it. But I never do any piece of writing, even the AI, and I've done studies in generative AI. I love it, right? But I speak a certain way, I communicate a certain way. So everything that I do, if I get it out of ChatGPT, ideas or whatever, I schmooze it. I turn it into Wendy's tone. You can't send something off, because I've seen clients have come back to me and said, oh, I sent this resume off and they told me in an interview it read like an AI resume. I looked at it, I go, yes, it does. And I know within 5 minutes, because I'm talking to you now on Zoom, and I can hear that you don't communicate like that.
Yeah, I love it. I love
So
it.
the disparity is quite big. And that's why AI is never going to replace humans. We need to still communicate authentically as us.
Absolutely.
But it's a brilliant tool if you want ideas, and if you want
Yeah.
something to generate it quickly for you and give you a framework, it's brilliant.
I do. I love it. I love it. And I help it understand my voice by giving it things I've written, by saying, this is my voice.
Yes.
And then I find that helps me get more in my language. I love it. I love it. I love it. Wow, this has been a fantastic interview. We've learned lots about, well, thank you, Wendy, for so openly sharing your story as to why you're so passionate about making a difference in people as a career coach, and these fabulous insights to help us move forward. Just in closing, what would be your final words of wisdom to our listeners today?
So my final words of wisdom is to anyone who's gone through a difficult time. There's always hope, but you need to take action towards the hope story that you want to create. Like, so many people become stuck in something, and I want to encourage people to understand that there are people out there that are going to help you, and that you are responsible for the way forward. You have to become, I suppose, the master of your own ship. And never underestimate the value of your own story, because I have seen people turn their lives around, and I've seen people succeed in careers just from sharing their authentic stories. So don't underestimate the value of that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today, Wendy, and educating us in all things, how to get a job and how to upskill. Like, you might have a job right now, but you want to go to the next level. And this is how you need to turn up so that you stand out from the crowd and that they take you seriously. And it doesn't sound like it's written by ChatGPT, and that you're sharing your beautiful stories and coming along really confidently when you're speaking at an interview. I love it. Thank you so much, Wendy. I hope that you come back with us next year.
Oh,
and we
absolutely.
can dive into some more topics, because you are a plethora of information. We've only just scratched the surface of Wendy today. There is so much more to know. Now, the information to connect with Wendy is going to be in the show notes and in the show description. So dive in. She's got some fabulous free resources, not just on her LinkedIn, but also on her landing page. And those links will be in the show notes. It's a goodbye from me and a goodbye from Wendy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.